You know what no one tells you about grief? That it's forever. Not continuous, but everlasting. As long as you won't see your loved one again, you'll eventually return to the suffering. You will laugh. You will love again. You will feel truly sincere happiness at times. But every other day, you'll still wake up with 1,000 knots in your guts because a part of you is gone to never return. My grandmother was the only person I had in the world. I never knew who my dad was. My mom was a deadbeat drunk who I was glad to not be around. Together, Grandma and I lived on her modest pension, and she occasionally made homemade sweets or crochet tablecloths to make ends meet. She taught me to be righteous and never owe anyone money, even if that puts us just a few inches above survival. Our idea of happiness was watching TV together, or the only meal of the week we could afford to buy some meat. The old one-bedroom apartment borrowed from a distant cousin was always colder than it should be during winter, hotter than it should during summer, but we didn't go hungry or cold enough to feel like death was coming with its freezing embrace. And we rarely got sick. She was very cautious with our health because she knew we couldn't afford to pay for a medical emergency. Our beaten-down blankets and cheap herbal teas made a very decent job. As I said, right above survival. Our life got slightly better when I was old enough to work, but the extra money went mostly on Grandma's new meds. She was 62, getting old, but still with many years ahead of her. Or so I thought. Despite being poor, I had dreams of going to college and giving her a better life. I was never exceptionally smart, but she always encouraged me to be hardworking. It's the only way to get somewhere if you're born like us, she'd say. I had dreams of giving her the best life I could, the same she did for me. I never aspired much, just having her grow old without a worry in the world. Every single dream I ever had, it was interrupted by my mother. She drunkenly invaded our home while I was at work, demanding Grandma to give her whatever I had saved to go to college, which was nothing. She got nervous and hit Grandma in the head. The hit didn't kill her instantly. I came home to find the sweetest person I ever knew, curled up in a sobbing mess after being assaulted by her own daughter. I insisted to take her to the ER, but she assured me that the physical pain was almost nothing compared to the psychological. She felt guilty because she was the one to raise that monster, and almost felt that she deserved to be punished for that. It was truly heartbreaking. I hated my mother so much for that. I knew I'd never forgive her, even before I knew that her acts of violence had led Grandma to the blood clot in the brain that killed her 10 days later. I'm still haunted by the memory of being called by a nervous neighbor in the middle of my shift. I wasn't even the one to find her. I didn't even get to say goodbye. No more than the goodbye you say when you know you'll see someone by the end of the day. I didn't even get to hold her hand while she died. Probably so scared and worried to leave me alone in the world. The day she died was the day I turned 18. She collapsed while frosting my cake, I realized, as the pastry bag lied near her unfinished work, cruelly interrupted and forever forgotten. I couldn't even bring myself to look at it and throw it away. It was almost like she had been holding on all these days to make sure I'd be a legal adult and have one less worry. It was exactly the kind of person that she was. A giver. Someone who only felt that they were worth being alive if they were being helpful and gentle and altruistic the whole time. Someone whose happiness depended directly on making sure everyone else was happy. Someone who deserved to have her kindness acknowledged by being loved so dearly. She really was the only person I had. I had school friends and neighbors, and they were as good to me as they could. bringing me food and offering to take care of some household chores during the first few days of my grief. But at the end of the day, no one else would dry my tears or make the nightmares go away. It helped, it really did. It's just that grief doesn't go away so soon, if ever. I still needed to work, and I would still have to cook and clean for myself and look after myself for the rest of my life. The chores wouldn't wait until my emptiness at least subsided. It didn't. I found little solace in everything else in my life, forever working a menial job and coming back to a painfully quiet apartment. A few months after losing her, the relative who owned the apartment needed it back, and I had to move in with roommates. It was when I realized the problem wasn't the silence, but the only voice I wanted to hear and would never again be able to. Coming home to a hot meal isn't only very convenient, it's love and care manifested in one of the purest ways. Without her cooking, I grew to despise food, because everything not made by her tasted lifeless, loveless. No matter how simple were her homemade dishes, they had soul, and they fed mine. I thought about killing myself nearly every day, and the only thing keeping me from it was knowing how inconvenient the rest of my days would be if I failed. I couldn't afford the luxury of being crippled for life with no one to care for me. So I just made it through, day after day. I dated and I loved, and life was way more bearable when I had someone to devote myself to. But it was not enough. A part of me, a huge piece of what I was and what I dreamed, had been taken way too soon, and every feeling that crossed my heart felt tainted and insufficient and gray. And people realized it, and they left me. I knew that I wouldn't love anyone the way I loved her. It would be truly bizarre to replace a grandmother with a boyfriend, but all the slots in me designed for loving other people were filled with sorrow, and they knew it, and they resented me. I had nice, caring partners. 2 even paid for my therapy, hoping that one day I could be unbroken. But it only helped me put my grief into words, not relieve it. People don't talk enough about the particular hardship of having someone suddenly taken from you. Losing a grandparent is part of life, I know that. But if they're too old, too frail, too sick, you can cope. You can have closure. You have time while they're still alive to accept that everyone's destiny is to die one day. It's natural and feels right in a sad way. Losing a grandparent in the middle of her decorating your birthday cake is just too cruel. And the fact that I wasn't able to prove my monster of a mother to be a murderer ate me up inside. All those things built up the normal grief of having someone you love pass, making it unbearable, suffocating. I hate my birthdays. The fact that I was born is directly connected to her death, both in date and motive. I wish I was never born so the world wouldn't have lost someone so precious so soon, so she could brighten someone else's life. 10 years after losing her, I woke up from a dream where she hadn't died. In the dream, I asked about her death, and she said that was nothing. I foolishly believed it, so much that the first thing I did in the morning was to leave the bedroom in a good mood, knowing that she would be in the kitchen to greet me with breakfast. But she wasn't, of course. And it broke me again. In parts I didn't even know that could be shattered further. The shard that hurt the most was the fact that I had to spend 10 years without her, and I still had many years ahead, all without her. My penance hadn't been enough, and it would never be, because it would never end. It was my 28th birthday, and it was no coincidence that I met him that day. He looked deranged and hungry if you stared into his eyes. But if you didn't, he was just a polite and well-dressed guy. Your regular John, around 40 years old, in a suit, shiny shoes, an elegant hat, and leather gloves, like so many others in this city. He entered the convenience store where I worked when it was completely empty, in the middle of the afternoon. I can't remember what he said to lure me, but it doesn't matter. It wouldn't take a lot to convince me to take the offer. Me, who had everything to gain and nothing to lose. So, you're saying I can see my grandmother whenever I want to with this? I asked, holding the small apparatus he handed me.
Not only her, my friend. If you want to see any other deceased person, you just need to focus on their image, and it will do the rest for you. You just need to sign this contract.
I agree to lose a small part of myself to regain another. Nothing further will be taken from or given to me. I signed, and his eyes immediately looked less deranged and way less hungry. He brought his face closer to mine, over the counter, and smiled with teeth slightly too crooked and a breath slightly too sulfuric.
You've made a great deal, my friend.
I decided to test the apparatus the very same night. It came with a brief guide that said you can't be interrupted in real life, or else your experience will be 2. And if you start again, it will count as 2 times. I came home late anyway, and all my roommates were already fast asleep. I lied in bed, and I closed my eyes, carefully placing the apparatus over them. I immediately started to have what can only be described as a lucid dream, except I didn't know I was dreaming, only that I was in control of what I saw. I just knew that I could shape my reality at will, and it was like being God herself. I spent some of the most pleasant hours of my life with my grandmother, talking about my day and all these years without her, like I was just a traveler returning home to tell amazing foreign tales. When I woke up, I didn't feel anything wrong. It was only when I showered that I realized I was missing the tip of my left little toe. You can probably guess how it went for a while after that. Every day, I sailed through my boring life, knowing that I would feel happy and warm and embraced by night. I always woke up well rested and didn't feel hungry the whole day, like I actually had been with her, eating her delicious cooking. I never had a very wild imagination, but after a few times meeting her in a pleasant farmhouse with a view to perfectly green grass and flawlessly blue sky with fluffy white clouds, I started thinking of new sceneries. We traveled together, eating together in quaint and empty trattorias, watching leaves and snowfall, and always talking enthusiastically about anything and everything. I wasn't a talker, but in these dreams I felt that I could really be myself, a part of myself that usually couldn't trespass my thick shell of shyness. I was happy. I was so happy. I didn't care when I started losing more parts of my body, the tip of all my toes, then the tip of my ears, the whole ear, large chunks of hair, almost all my eyelashes, the tip of my nose, the tip of my tongue, the sight in one of my eyes, my phalanges, first distal, then middle, then proximal, until I lost a whole hand. If people around me noticed, they didn't care and never brought it up. I kept dreaming every day. In my dreams, I wasn't crippled. And every time a piece of my body disappeared, it was painless and completely cauterized, so I didn't care. Every day life was harder, but it was still manageable, knowing that my nights would be exactly everything that I wanted. One night, I decided to think of my grandmother's deceased husband. I knew his face very well from a photograph. I figured she would be very happy to be with him, and I would love to meet my grandfather too. Everything went nicely, but when I woke up, I had lost a whole arm and had to call in sick. A good salesman knows exactly when to come back, so he did. He visited in my apartment after my roommates left for work,
How do you like your power, my friend?
I just lost an arm, I replied simply.
It would have taken way more time to lose it if you didn't think to bring 2 people at once. Someone who's been dead for 30 years.
He sounded outraged, almost like he wasn't the one to give me this ability. What do I do now?
Have you noticed that sometimes when you wake up from a nice dream with good old Granny, you haven't lost any part of your body?
I guess.
You haven't realized it because, well, you never had a lot of personality. But at these times, you're losing yourself. Take a good look in the mirror.
He took one from his pocket and offered it to me. My eyes looked deranged and hungry. I was never one to linger around the bathroom mirror, just take a quick look at my hair, so I hadn't noticed. I was inhuman. I look like you, I mumbled, terrified. He took off one of his gloves, revealing a prosthetic hand.
The real offer comes now, my friend. You're becoming one of us. So now I give you 2 choices. Continue as a customer until you lose every bit of your body, your sanity, and your essence, or become a saleswoman.
What would I do? I asked. I've been behind a counter my whole life. Being a saleswoman didn't sound so bad. And what are we?
Oh, we are still human, just a few improvements. You'll retain your current form and get some prosthetics, courtesy of the employer. But you won't be immortal or anything. We don't live past 100.
He replied the second question first.
Do you ever wonder what happens to your lost body parts?
I didn't. He seemed slightly disappointed.
They feed me. So whenever you get a dream, I get a dream. You see what it means, right? Get clients, they're happy, you're happy. When they're in a sorry state, you recruit them, so they'll be happier too.
He smiled, with teeth less crooked than the last time. How do I find clients? How did you find me?
When you turn into someone like me, you become very good at smelling grief. Hang around for a while and you start seeing the memories that are causing the sorrow. After that, the apparatus sells itself.
That was when I noticed that his eyes weren't as deranged and hungry as before, but his breath was worse than ever.
Will you take it?
He asked. I returned the smile, grabbing a pen. It's been some time since I've been in the business. He was right. The smell of grief is very easy to spot, and I've gotten myself a decent number of clients. The fact that I'll always look 28 is a great bonus, and the prosthetics are pretty cool. I don't regret it. Not at all. Despite the crooked teeth and the sulfuric breath, it was the best decision of my life. The only problem is that I keep growing hungrier. But luckily, I just smelled a lot of delicious sorrow inside you. If nothing can take away your pain, and you have nothing to lose, don't worry. I can see your pain, I can relate to it, and I can end it. I'll know how to find you if you just think of me, and I will eat your grief.